Welcome back to the Sunny Show. Today, I'm fortunate enough to have on Nabil Moo, formerly of I Set My Friends on Fire, and currently working as a colorist in Los Angeles. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah.
And I got to go ahead and say, one of the creators of what I think is the quintessential scene album. In my personal opinion, I think it's like that album, Still Searching, maybe throw an Under Oath album in there, but that's top three for me. Nabil, how are you doing, man?
I'm well, man. Thank you for having me. And also that's a big honor. I know Under Oath was really huge for me growing up. So, yeah, no, to be even put in the same realm as them is very cool.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. Well,
Yeah.
let's just jump from the beginning, man. I know you're from Miami. Is that where you grew up?
Yeah. Born and raised. Both of my parents were actually from Jamaica.
Okay.
And then they moved up to Miami, like before I was born. So I was born in Miami. But
Okay.
culturally I'm kind of like Jamaican, but I don't know. My mom's Indian Jamaican, my dad's Chinese Jamaican, so I'm kind of like a culturally ambiguous, I guess.
Oh, that's cool, man. That's a cool
Yeah,
mix, man.
yeah,
Well,
for sure.
how was that growing up? You see, your first generation in America. Was
Yeah.
that did that
Mhm.
play a big role? Obviously, like growing up in like high school and stuff like that.
I guess so. Like, Miami's like a very interesting place in the sense that it's like kind of there's a lot of I don't know. I always think of Miami as kind of being kind of removed from the rest of the country in the sense of like, sure, it's like geographically part of Florida, but even within Florida, it's like such a far removed place in terms of just culture. Like, there's a lot of like Caribbean and South American culture there. That's like I think like I don't know if you compare it to like I don't know people in Gainesville or like the culture up there is like very different. Um,
Right.
so I don't know how much of like how much of a difference it was for me kind of growing up, first generation in Miami, because like a lot of the people I went to school with were also first generation, like I don't know,
Right.
Colombian, uh, Venezuelan, like I don't know, a lot of people like that. So, but yeah, it was definitely interesting growing up in Miami. I and to my own detriment, like I never actually fully picked up Spanish. Like I was able to speak enough to kind of get by, but I feel like I kind of missed out on that on
Right.
a lot of things because of that.
Right.
But yeah, yeah, it was cool. It's very hot, very humid and very hot
Right.
growing up
Right.
in Miami.
Well, now you're in LA too, so that
Yeah,
Spanish would have definitely played a major role, right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so how was school for you? I'm just trying to pivot into the music career. Did you start playing music when you were young?
Sure.
Is that something that's in your family? Were you just like into like super emo bands growing up? Like how'd that happen?
It's funny. I've always liked music. My brother was actually like a big influence in terms of me getting into music.
Hmm.
He was trying to be like a I don't know like a hip hop producer. So he I don't know throughout like high school he kind of accumulated a bunch of recording equipment, and actually we had like a spare room in our house that he kind of made like a little home studio in. And this was like kind of during like the mid to late '90s and stuff. So like like recording software and recording equipment was like a lot more cost prohibitive. So it was like I don't know, it was like just for him to have like something like, oh wow, you can actually record yourself and play back. Like to me as like I don't know, like a 5 year old, like oh that's so crazy. Um, and pretty much there's my brother's 9 years older than me, so there's a big age gap. So when he went to college, like he left all his gear there. So I was like,
Hmm.
oh, this is kind of cool. So I just kind of started tinkering around with it, and then when I got into actually in like sixth grade or something, I joined like I don't know like band or something there, and I picked up like the clarinet because I was
Wait,
like
wait.
because I was like I want to learn how to play music, and like I
Right.
know that was like the easiest thing that I could think of, and I was terrible, and I don't know, I think I got to be like second chair in high school, but yeah, like pretty much like my interest in music kind of started I guess like in elementary school, and like throughout high school I was in like my school's wind ensemble. I was in the jazz band. I was like a huge kind of like band nerd, all with the intent of just kind of learning to write music and to just understand it better. Because to me, it just was like such a cool, and it still is like a very cool art form
Right.
because it's like the perfect blend between creative and technical. Like in terms of like sure, like a lot of it is driven by emotion, but there's a lot of technical like harmonic stuff going on the ground
Hmm.
level. So, yeah, I don't know. It's so yeah, like that's kind of how I got into music. Like my parents listened to like a bunch of pop music, just stuff on the radio when I grew up. So nothing like very like crazy, but I don't know. And my brother didn't really play instruments that like he can get by on keyboard, but he wasn't like really a musician. But yeah, I don't know. It just I've always had this fascination of trying to like understand something and try to deconstruct it and put it back together. Like even as a kid, like I would, you know, I don't know, play with a bunch of like Legos and Lincoln Logs and stuff. So that kind of stuff always just kind of piqued my interest.
Okay.
So I think I music was just kind of like a big puzzle to me, and I just kind of wanted like, oh, like how does this work? Like, and just try to get better at it.
That's awesome, man. When did you start dabbling into like your own little bands and stuff like that? Was that because
Yeah.
I know a lot about you, man. It's a little weird, but
No,
we're
it's
the
all good.
Cavalry. Was that your first band?
Yeah. Oh no. So like man, like throughout high school, like I went to like a small like private school in Miami.
Mhm.
So like I think in my grade there's probably like 100 kids at the largest. So
Okay.
it was a pretty small community, and a lot of the people were really cool, but like I don't know, like music, like that kind of music like rock music wasn't really like their thing, which I
Hmm.
totally got. But it was yeah, I don't know. It's just like I just ended up kind of like connecting with a bunch of people like actually outside of my school through just like mutual friends or like going to like local shows and stuff. And I think I don't know, in high school I must have been at least in like 10 bands or something.
Jeez,
Um
man.
yeah, I mean
You're
like a lot of
hopping
them were like
around.
short-lived. Yeah, well, I mean a
Right.
lot of them were just like kind of reworkings of with like the same band members. We were like, "Oh, let's try to do this." Like when I was in middle school, I was really into like pop punk and like skate punk. Like I don't know, I was like NoFX was like my favorite band like in like
Oh
7th
yeah.
grade. And then I got like kind of into heavier stuff like in like 8th grade. Like I remember hearing like I don't know, uh, like a box full of sharp objects by like the Used or something. And like
Yeah.
I saw the video on the music video on MTV2. I was like, whoa, what the hell is this?
Right.
Like it's screaming, which like at the time I was like, whoa, that's too intense for me. But like I don't know, just like the guitar work and the I don't know. I felt like it was just more there's more to it than like the previous heavier stuff I'd listened to.
Right.
And then that I think the U specifically was kind of like my gateway band into kind of getting into like more like heavier music. And yeah so we are the Cavalry was when the I think we formed it when I was either a junior or senior in high school. And it was Matt, myself, and then three other like two of my school or what's it called schoolmates, and then a
Hmm.
friend that I had. Then we just kind of did it for a couple years, and or maybe a year and a half or so.
Okay.
But then I don't know. Pretty much, I think yeah. Senior year, everyone was like going to move off, and Matt and I were like, okay, well, we still want to make music together. So then that's how we kind of started just dabbling together, and yeah, created I Set My Friends on Fire.
That's amazing, man. I like that. What
Yeah,
jumping ahead a little bit, what was it
yeah,
like going viral in the MySpace era? Because going viral back then was like pretty profound. It was a new thing to go viral. And I
yeah,
know the Crank That cover, going back to
yeah,
also you like to tinker. I remember I read that you obviously you reconstructed the whole beat.
yeah.
What was going viral like? Did you guys like understand the enormity of the situation at the time? Because you guys were super young too, and it's like the dark ages of the internet. Like, what was that like?
It was surreal. I remember. Well, so when we first started the band, we didn't actually think of it as just being like we're just kind of like, oh, let's just keep on making music. We had no intention of actually performing anything.
Right.
Um, so Matt and I just because in the previous bands we were in, we always felt kind of restricted either by I don't know like different band members' inputs of like, oh no, we can't do this because we'll sound like this, or we can't do that. And then when we started some of my friends of fire, we came to the agreement of like, hey, we're just gonna do whatever we want to, not limit ourselves. Um, so I think that was kind of like the origin of how things got started. And yeah, it was really surreal. I remember Matt was like, hey, like I heard this song, by Soldier Boy, and I listened to him like, okay. He's like, oh, we should do a cover of him. Like, I don't know, man. He's like, hey, man, like, and he brought up like, hey, we said no restrictions. I was like, okay, yeah, I guess you got me. Then I was like
Get you there.
begrudgingly like, okay, let's do it. Um, and yeah, we recorded, and I think prior to that we had written like ASL, and I think maybe we were working on like one other song, but I forget which one. And so or it might have been Beauty and Beauty's and Eye of the Beer Holder or whatever. And so we kind of had those going on, and then we made a MySpace and posted the cover. and then yeah, it just kind of blew up. And I think we're getting like 50,000 plays per day, like which once again, yeah, like back then was kind of like unheard of for like
Yeah,
a
with
band that just
accounting
kind
for
of launched.
inflation, that might be like a
Yeah,
million a day now on SoundCloud. Yeah.
yeah, no, it was pretty wild, and yeah, it like we were just kind of like, what's going on? And then like MySpace thought we were using like bots or something, just because yeah, it was just kind of unreal. Like it seemed like we're cheating the system somehow, but
Right.
both men and I like were like we wouldn't know how to do that. Like I barely could put like an image on my MySpace using HTML.
Yeah.
Like I don't know I wouldn't know how to do any of that or whatever. So yeah, so we just put out the cover. It kind of blew up, and then uh fortunately people kind of like listened to the two other songs we had up at the time, and that kind of gained like I don't know, kind of sparked some interest, and we made these like two little like videos. I think like one was like ismfof the musical or whatever.
Oh yeah, I've seen them, man.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
very
and
familiar.
yeah, just because like I know we just thought it was fun to do, and
Hmm.
I know like obviously the aesthetic of it is very of its time,
Very
and
much so.
you could tell the people who, like I know because I was like mostly like kind of shooting them and editing them, and I had no idea what I was doing.
Hmm.
But you know that was it was all kind of in the under the guy, just kind of just doing things for fun.
Right.
And eventually like we I know got a call from Epitaph Records saying like, hey, like we want to sign you guys, and we're like, okay. I remember like we got the call, and then we just started like we're like, okay, cool, and then like we hung up the phone. We were both like jumping up and down, like we were just like thrilled. um, so yeah, that's more or less like how we kind of got started in terms of like I don't know, kind of how MySpace was kind of our launching pad, I guess, in terms of getting somewhere.
That's amazing, man.
um,
It's really like that story is just, it's just crazy that it was just off. You
yeah,
started with a cover, got that much attention, and then followed up like with real quality music. That's so amazing, man.
yeah. I mean, I honestly have to credit Matt with all that, just because like I don't know. I feel like Matt was definitely like pretty tuned into kind of like the cultural zeitgeist of like the
Okay.
internet at that time. I was just like, hey, like I like recording stuff. I recorded everything on like my like old like polycarbonate, like those like white MacBooks. You remember those?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I had like one of those and like an M box too, or like this like very like kind of meager like setup or something. So
Right.
but yeah, like Matt was the one who's like, hey, let's do it. So like I was like, all right, well sure. So um yeah, it was very wild. I still can't. It feels like, I mean, granted it's been a while, but like it still kind of feels like it was like kind of all like a fog, like a dreamy fog.
Right.
Um, so it was yeah, that's how we got started, I guess. And
Cool.
also I wanted to mention that uh actually when we got signed, or when we got the offer from Epitaph, we actually had never performed live as a band.
Right.
Like Matt and I both performed with We Are the Cavalry, but we never
Hmm.
actually performed as I Set My Friends on Fire. And our second show was actually Bamboozle
That's what I
up
have that
in
written down.
yeah
Your second show is Bamboozle. That's insane. The pressure
yeah
of doing that.
yeah, that was crazy.
How'd that show go?
It was very cold that day, and
Okay.
because yeah, it was up in Jersey, and I forget, like I think it was in the fall, and yeah, I remember like just I don't know, just being very cold and just kind of nervous the entire time, but um yeah, I mean, we had a good turnout. Like it went well enough. Like granted, like we had only written some of the songs like I think a couple weeks before, so we didn't have a whole lot of practice time to do it. And then
Right.
I think I don't know, like my memory kind of escapes me because it was like I was just so like I was just running on adrenaline the entire time.
Hmm.
Um, and I just kept on just looking down, just making sure I wasn't messing with these guitar parts I wrote like a few days before for some stuff.
That's
Uh,
that's such a trip.
yeah. So, but it went well. I think for considering all the factors that we had to work with, I think it went as well as it could have gone.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
That's incredible, man. Bamboozle. Bamboozle, for
Yeah.
people who don't know, Bamboozle was like one of the bigger festivals at the time. Like I remember like
Yeah.
Foo Fighters headlined one year for perspective, one of the
Yeah.
years I went. It was not a
Mhm.
small festival.
No.
That's
No.
amazing, man. So then you guys made your first album pretty quick, I guess, right? Um,
Yeah.
that's
So,
incredible.
yeah. So we pretty much like we did a lot of pre-production. Travis Richter from First to Last came down and like kind of did some pre-pro with us, but we were already like writing songs, so he just kind of gave us some like guidance in terms of like, oh, like, hey, how about we add some additional like, I don't know, percussion here, or he really helped Matt kind of, I guess, like tune in kind of like how like the vocal approach for the album. And then I was just kind of like bouncing ideas off of him and stuff. So he was with us for some pre-pro, and then we went to Valdosta, Georgia, to record the album with Lee Dias, who's like a great producer and engineer. And yeah, we were up there for like 2 weeks. We stayed at this like very like grimy like motel for like 2 weeks and just ate nothing but like Sonic and like Crystal's chicken. It was like very, very humbling.
Right. It's very southern
I mean,
of you guys.
yeah, I mean, it was fine. It was good, and we ate a Waffle House, of course. But it was not a very glamorous experience. It was more of like, cool, all right, let's try to knock out this album like as quickly as we can. So, essentially, because I programmed like all the drums and like synths and stuff, and it had already written the parts, like we pretty much spent the most of the time just tracking guitar, bass, and vocals, and yeah, we were able to do that all in like 2 weeks, I think.
That, wow, blows my mind.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
speaking of, I'm taking a big leap here, but just because we're talking about album production, if you're comfortable speaking on it, can you speak on the process and what ended up happening with the original Astral Rejection, if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure. So what happened was we had done a slew of tours. We were both kind of, I think, everyone involved, because it was me, Matt's, our drummer Chris, and we're just like, I know we need it. It'd been enough time where it was like, okay, cool, we probably should start working on a new album. And yeah, it just so essentially we started like just kind of workshopping some stuff. I don't know, it was a little harder to kind of, I guess, like come up with songs this time around, just because I felt like, I don't know, I feel like touring definitely added a layer of complexity to the writing process, just because I feel like, I don't know, when you play the same songs every night after night, different cities, and then you're kind of around bands that play similar kind of music, it kind of can change your, well, at least for me, like in hindsight, it felt like, if now I can see like, oh, it kind of changed my perspective on like what I was doing. Because like, to be perfectly frank, like when we started the band, I was kind of not listening to that kind of music as much in my own personal listening. I was like, because I've always liked a wide variety of music.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I was kind of like not growing out of it, but just kind of expanding. Like that wasn't really like the thing that was like really exciting me as much anymore. Right. So when we went in the studio, I feel like everyone had like vague ideas of what we wanted to do, but it was hard for us to kind of come to like a place where we all felt like good. So we tried to do that. That didn't really pan out. So then we tried to go back again, and then we started writing the album. But now we had more of kind of like I guess we had to meet like a deadline of like trying to get something out, because it had been, I think, almost 2 years, or maybe past 2 years at that point. So we tried working on it, and we eventually came up with an album that was like very bare bones, but it was just so difficult in terms of like I think just being burnt out and trying to do something, and is not a good combination in terms of something creative and something you're happy with. So and plus I think we were trying to stay away from breakdowns. Right. I think that was like at least in my mind, I think we're like, because like we're with so many like bands who are just like going like, oh yeah, just like slower and just lower tunings and stuff. It's like,
2010
okay, that's
was
cool.
all
and
breakdowns.
yeah, it was just like kind of like this like very like this onslaught of just like, oh yeah, like oh, you're in drop C, we'll go in drop B. Oh, you're in drop B, we'll just keep on going down and down. Just like literally go like half time, like yeah, it's like quarter time stuff where it's like kind of like ridiculous. It's like, okay, cool, that's fun and all, but like I've always
as brutal as possible.
Yeah, and it's like that's fine. I mean, that I still I like that kind of music, I put on a song like that like every now and again then, but like it's not like I don't see much of it. To me at the time, it didn't feel very challenging. Mm-hmm. I felt like the band could have like had so much potential to kind of expand the sound, in terms of like kind of I don't know, like not going away from electronic, but just kind of embracing more kind of like more of a band feel, and more of like kind of like something where it's like not all relying on like all like the programming stuff, or where like melodies can kind of just sit where they are, and obviously just be screams and stuff can be as heavy as it could be. So that was kind of my intention going into the project, but also a lot of it was me just like, hey, I just want to make something that I'm happy with and we're all happy with, and let's just do it. And throughout the process, it just like I feel like everyone just kind of it felt like everyone kind of wanted different things, but it was hard for us to kind of align.
Right.
And essentially, we turned in a version of the album to the record label, and and I don't know, like I know that there's kind of, I guess, like I don't know. Once again, I'm gonna say my memory is very fuzzy, but I remember, and from what everyone who around me remembers, is that they were like, "Hey guys, this isn't really what we're looking for. You're gonna have to maybe we can keep a couple songs, but you're gonna have to like kind of rework stuff." And at that point, I was just kind of already, as I said, like I was already kind of burnt out and just kind of not even, I didn't really feel connected to that kind of music anymore. So I felt like, okay, with all the stuff that was going on in terms of like, I don't know, at the time I was like, being on tour is like a 24/7 job. Like you're away from your family. I was constantly getting sick on the road just because you're interacting with all these people. You're like living like it's very easy to live in an unhealthy lifestyle. But even just like climate, you're going from one climate to another. It's just like I just was always
Right.
I was always sick. So I was like, cool. So I'm miserable on the road. I'm missing out on all these like family events. I miss my friends. It was hard for me to have like stability and stuff. So I was like, okay, well, this kind of stopped being fun. So I was like, okay, if there's a time for me to leave that would cause hopefully the least amount of damage, it would probably be then, because like we're in between tour cycles. Like we're there's still some time to write an album. Like I was like, okay, well, I'd rather do it. Like if I was gonna do it, I'd rather do it then than be in the middle of a tour and then like screw everyone over because I'm like, oh, I can't do it. And then like that, I don't think that's fair.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so yeah, so I chatted with like my brother who was our manager at the time, and also I chatted with Matt and just kind of was like, hey guys, I can't do this anymore, because like
Right.
to me it was like there's so much sacrifice to it that I just was like not really willing to make anymore. And also it's just like, I don't know, it's kind of heartbreaking to like put so much effort into something and have it to kind of not be well received, which that's life, and that's just like anything that you do that's creative or whatever. It's like it's there's no guarantee that everyone will like it, or the people who you hope will like it will. So so yeah, that's essentially what happened with that album. And then I guess it got leaked a few years later, and the Epitaph was like kind enough to actually be like, oh, okay, cool, let's do it. And they actually remastered it, so it sounded better than the leak. And yeah, it's out there in the world now. So like in a weird way, when it came out, I felt like a lot of kind of closure, because I feel like for the longest time I felt so kind of I had this kind of unease about the whole situation, because I'm like, man, like that's, I don't know, and I don't know, like I'm very critical of what I do in terms of like I don't know, like creative stuff or just any of my work is, I try to put as much effort in as I can. So I remember, like, I know when it first came out again, like when I was first like officially released, I was like, oh my god, like what was I thinking? Like kind of like I could kind of hear the it kind of took me back to this kind of desperate mindset I was in terms of just like, I want to make something good, but I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm just kind of panicking. So yeah, so that's yeah, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm giving these like very long-winded answers. So.
No, that's great, man. For the record,
Yeah.
man, no joke, I listen to OG Astral Rejection like every single day, dude. Like,
Oh, nice, man.
it's
That's
on my
awesome.
playlist, man. It's just good. It's vibe music, man. It's a
Nice.
shame it didn't come out, but I mean, everything happens
Yeah.
for a reason.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, and I think it's well, first of all, thank you for for listening to it. Like
Of course,
um
yeah.
I like and like I know I just said like, oh, I like have these like feelings about it. Like now it's like been so long, and I've just kind of come to terms with like, okay, cool, like you know I think it's very easy to kind of look at things out of context in terms of like, I feel like you have to kind of think of like, okay, at the time, given the situation, given like who I was as a person, where I was emotionally and mentally at the time, like this makes sense. Like it makes sense that it came out the way it did. And because of that, like I should kind of listen to it with that mindset instead of just like the subjective, like, oh, what would 2022 Nabil think about it? It's like, would he make? It's like, no, like why? It's like that's so unfair.
Definitely.
So yeah, it's that's more or less how that album kind of got like released and like the process of it. Um,
Okay.
yeah,
I think it's just important to note for anyone listening. These guys were 19, 20, 21 when all this was happening. Like they weren't like they were barely adults, you know?
yeah,
So
yeah.
being essentially a kid going through 24/7 touring, making albums in 2 weeks, like it's insane to think about, like as like older adults now. Um,
Yeah, it's well it also too fun little note is I remember so when we got signed when we actually went to go record the album I was finishing up my freshman year in college and Matt was graduating from high school and I remember we actually picked him up like on his last day of high school to go drive up to record the album.
dude, that's
So
like that's
like that's
yeah.
yeah so like yeah it was it was pretty crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. All
um
right. Well, that's amazing, man. Just jumping into something else, man.
yeah
And I'm gonna try not to get corny, man. But are you aware of
yeah
how
no
like
man.
important you guys were for like other people of color in the scene? Because like growing up, dude, like you guys were like the only band with like brown dudes on stage, and like I remember being in the scene and being like, "Yo!" Like
Yeah.
when I found out you guys were like not white, I was like very excited and like and I didn't understand at the time it was because I wasn't seeing like representation at all. But like,
Sure.
were you
Yeah.
guys aware of that? And on top of that, what was it? What was that like being brown in a or brown? I'm not sure. You like your ethnicities, your mixed, but just being a person of
Oh yeah,
color,
sure, yeah.
in the scene, what was that like? Did you guys face like any notable like racism, discrimination? Did you get a lot of corny jokes from like fans or other bands? Like, any issues touring? How do you? Is there anything specific that you think about your journey that you think
Yeah.
race played a role in?
Um it's
Heavy
funny
question,
because
I
like
know.
no, it's a great question. I think at the time, like, I mean, it's very clear. Even back then, it's like whether or not we were aware of it, you know, like race probably did play a huge part in our in my involvement in the band at least, and I know Matt's because Matt is Egyptian,
Mm-hmm.
um, and yeah, it's I mean. Yeah, at the time it was very clear. It's like yeah, it was very much a non, you know, it was pretty much like mostly a white space in terms of like a lot of the people in the bands and stuff, and who a lot of those people were great, very friendly people. But I did, you know, it's like I think the only prior to like the main like I don't know the guitarist from Sum 41 like was like the only like brown guitarist that I saw growing up.
Right.
So I was like in the like a I don't know that kind of like that kind of pop punk kind of rock music and stuff. I was like, oh, that was
Right.
really cool. But yeah, no, I mean it was very clear that we didn't look like all the other bands that were like toying with or kind of grouped in with in terms of just like I don't know like tours and MySpace and stuff or whatever. So it's yeah, and I think we kind of went along with that. And like fortunately enough, like our band was so polarizing, or like that at the time it was very polarizing because like it's like people like I think like race was kind of like the last thing on people's mind. I think they just hated us. If they hated us, they hated the music more so than hating the music because we're brown.
Right.
But who knows?
That's the
Like,
thing.
so it's like because you know, like the music could be perceived as obnoxious or pretentious or just kind of like nonsensical,
Mm-hmm.
which is you know fine, I guess. But yeah, yeah, I think yeah, I don't know. It's yeah, like the whole discussion of like inclusivity and representation wasn't really a thing as much back then, but
Right.
I definitely I don't know when we would meet fans and especially like you know people of color, a lot of them were like, hey man, like you know it's really cool that you're doing this, and like it was just a lot of support. I don't remember seeing or experiencing any overt like kind of racism or prejudice, just because I think a lot of the people that came to our shows liked our music for the most part.
Right.
So they're mostly supportive. And then I was actually really concerned that going through the South we'd encounter a lot of racism. But fortunately enough, I don't know. I don't know what happened. I feel like everything with when I was in the band was like such a lightning in a bottle kind of thing, where it's like it's so specific and like I feel like maybe we probably would have experienced worse things, but we just at least on my side I didn't I
That's great
didn't,
to
or
hear.
I just or just didn't register. So like we're very fortunate. I feel I don't know words can't describe how fortunate and how like grateful I am that things went as well as they did because they honestly could have just fallen flat on their face like from the get go, or
Right.
things could have gone terribly so many times and they didn't. So it was it was a very I don't know. It's a mixed bag because like obviously like I left for a reason and I still kind of
Hmm.
stand by that. I feel like it's just better for my quality of life and my personal happiness.
Understandable.
Um, but I wouldn't like given the option to go back and like redo stuff and do everything different. I don't think I would. I think it was a really great experience that I was very fortunate to have and appreciate, even though it came with a lot of things that were just difficult.
Right.
So yeah.
That's great, man. Well, you're still an artist today, man. Can you fill us in on the 12 years since you left? I saw my friends on fire. I was doing some research yesterday. I was on your
Mm.
LinkedIn.
Oh, nice. Cool.
I was
Yeah.
checking out your portfolio too. You're a colorist now. Can you just give
Yep.
us a quick rundown on what you do? I saw you like work with like McDonald's, Dunkin', Kevin Hart. I saw on your reel.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
can you just yeah,
Um,
what do colorists do?
so a colorist, if you think about like I don't know, like the like photo filters or like on your phone, essentially it's like that, but just like on a much more granular level. Like it's think about like Photoshop for video is essentially what it
Hmm.
is. We take we work with images and just try to kind of get them to look as good as it can, and to hopefully match the intent of like the director of photography, like the creative team behind it. So yeah, I've been doing it for a while. I got it. Actually, it's funny. Like, so after I left the band, I went back to school, and then I was curious about post production. Started interning at this company in Miami, and then after a month, they brought me on part time. And then after I graduated, I was thinking about going to law school. So
Okay.
I actually took the LSAT and like applied to a few places and could
Oh
have
yeah.
gone, but I was like, but then the company I was at offered me like a full time position. So yeah, I did that, and I don't know, I've been doing it for like 10 years now.
Wow.
Gone to different facilities, doing like compositing and color correction and data stuff. So yeah, it's just been a very interesting ride, and it's funny too because a lot of people I meet in posts kind of have like very strange backstories too in terms of how they got there. So it's a cool field.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Do you randomly get recognized now at all, like working and stuff? Do people see you and go,
Yeah.
"Oh, are you the dude from?"
Very rarely now. I think just most. I don't know. I mean, like it's been so long, and like
Right.
we're such like a small band in the grand scheme of things. Like I don't think, um, I don't know. Like occasionally there might be like a friend of a friend who's like, oh yeah, like they mentioned that like I don't know that we work together. It's like oh like him like, and then they're aware of the band because they were part of the scene. But
Right.
um, I don't know. The scene was such a I feel like such a small uh group of like people like it might have felt a lot bigger than it was at the time, but like that's just I don't know, that's just like subculture for you, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Yeah, when you were in it, it felt
Yeah,
like everyone was in it, but then you realize
yeah,
like no, it was like tens
yeah,
of
it's
thousands of
like
kids max.
and like yeah, and then like thousands of bands that just never really went anywhere.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just
yeah.
like yeah, so it's I don't know, it's like to me it's just like all kind of like this like very specific like time capsule kind of thing.
Hmm.
um But yeah, it hasn't really come up as much. It's just something I was like, oh yeah, I don't know. People ask like, oh, what'd you do before post? I'm like, I was in a band and just toured a bit, and that's kind of as far. And if they ask more, I'll tell them. But I don't know. It's like I don't know. I was only in the band for like 2.5 years, so it's like,
You're humble, man.
the
You're being humble.
no, I mean it's true though, because it's like a lot has
Right.
happened since then,
That's true.
culturally, musically. So it's like the world's catching on fire right now. So it's like
Right.
I think that there's larger things to talk about and or like or
Definitely.
just like to be concerned about. So it's like I don't know. It's to me it's like thinking about like a food or something you grew up with that you really liked that kind of just got discontinued. You're like, oh man, that sucks. It's that sucks. It's gone, but I really liked it when it was around.
I like that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Volt. I don't know if you ever drink Volt energy drink, but
Oh yeah.
yeah, man. All right, man. I mean, this has been great, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah.
This last thing,
Sure.
is there a way people can support you now? I saw your reel. I mean, I guess if
Mm.
any directors out there need a colorist, Nabil's very skilled. What would you like to say? The platform's yours, man.
um. Um. I don't know. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to like I just actually got a new job. I'm working over in Hollywood at like the facility where they do a bunch of like big like feature films and stuff. So I'm in terms of workload, I'm actually very fortunate to be pretty busy now. But what I would like to say is like if I could use this time is just like, I hope everyone is like doing well, and I hope everyone is supportive of one another and is very nice to each other, because the world is pretty crazy. So it's like, if everyone can just be, I don't know, I feel like it's so cheesy to say that. It's like, oh yeah, it's like, but it's just like, I don't know, the world's crazy right now, and I feel like it's going to be for a long time. I think, as long as people are kind to each other, it just makes everyone's life a little bit easier and a little bit more enjoyable. So if everyone could just kind of try to be kind to one another, that'd be like something I would like to promote.
Hell yeah, man.
In
I
lieu
like
of myself, because I don't know, who am I? I'm just some guy who just like does things on a computer in the dark for like hours on end and is fine with it. So
Hey man, it looks great, so that's what matters, man.
yeah.
All right, Nabil, thank you so much for coming on, man. It means so much to me. I think I might have gotten the exclusive Nabil first interview post breakup 12 years ago, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it's well, yeah, I don't know, like I don't know, like, and also too, I want to, if I can say one more thing about that, is like,
go ahead, man. Yeah.
I don't know, like, the reason I didn't like make like a big statement about it was like, I feel like I'm very like, I try to like not try to, I don't like attention, which is odd to say being in a band, but I just like to do my thing, and like I just like to support people around me, and kind of like, I don't know. I wanted, like, the reason I when I told Matt that I was like, I didn't want to do it, I told him, like, hey man, I'll be here to support you in any way I can. Like, I can help you get through I can give you all the audio stuff we have and whatever. And, because like, I understood how hard it would be for him, just because it's like, yeah, it's like, I wasn't expecting to leave, but it just kind of happened. So, I don't know. I feel like if I would have made a statement, then that would have just kind of, that could have created even like a negative space for the band and for Matt and everyone. Like, yeah, so I don't know. It's I tried, my goal always is to do the least amount of damage I can if it comes to anything negative. So that's how I've always been, and that's how I tried to continue to be. So yeah, that's why I never addressed it. And also too, I'm just a very anxious person, so the idea of having to explain myself about all the stuff,
I feel you, man.
I feel like, you heavy. Dude, it's like, I don't know, man, like I feel like if my head would have exploded or something. So
I feel you, man.
Yeah, so yeah, that's it. But yeah, man, thank you for having me on. And
of course, man.
Yeah,
of course, man.
Hopefully we can chat soon.
I would love to, man. If you ever want to hop on again, man, I would literally love that, man. I have a bunch of questions that I didn't get to, but I have Zoom basic, so I can't go long.